If you'd like to help sponsor this program, or if you'd like to go ahead and help with the next congressional campaign, you can donate at Cash App. The username is $Abel, ABEL, TX31. Once again, if you'd like to help donate and offset the cost of this program, or if you'd like to go ahead and help contribute to the next campaign, you can do so at the Cash App right above me there. So there's quite a few things I wanted to talk about today. We're going to get into everything that happened with Colombia yesterday. We're going to talk about how the DAs may try charging January 6th participants who were granted clemency by Trump with new crimes on state and local levels. Inspector General dismissed by Trump calls mass firings a threat to democracy, and how we hear that every time, all the time, whenever Trump does anything. Trump open to considering re-entering the World Health Organization, but they'd have to clean it up. I don't agree with that one at all, but we'll talk about that some. We're going to talk about Trump's crackdown on trans troops, new order nixes, preferred pronouns, and restricts facility use. And then Trump looks to enforce trans inmate crackdown as new acting federal prisons chief tapped. We're also going to talk about his nominations and where they're at in the confirmation process. And we're going to talk about Pete Hegseth, who took over the Department of Defense, and the three senators who decided to vote, three quote unquote Republican senators who decided to vote against him. I think we're going to go ahead and start out with everything that happened with Colombia yesterday. So Trump doing his mass deportations, rounding up the criminal illegal immigrants, the ones that have actually committed other crimes other than just crossing the border illegally. He had 2 planes full of Colombian immigrants that he was sending back. And when they were getting over to Colombia, they were told that they would not be allowed to land and that they would not take them back. So Trump went on the Truth Social and posted a little post here. And we're going to read that. And in here, he also talks about the retaliatory measures that he had instructed his administration to immediately take. So, and this is all quoted directly from Donald Trump's Truth Social page. I was just informed that 2 repatriation flights from the United States with a large number of illegal criminals were not allowed to land in Colombia. The order was given by Colombia's socialist president, Gustavo Petro, who is already very unpopular amongst his people. Petro's denial of these flights has jeopardized the national security and public safety of the United States. So I've directed my administration to immediately take the following urgent and decisive retaliatory measures. Emergency 25% tariff on all goods coming into the United States in 1 week. The 25% tariffs will be raised to 50%. A travel ban and immediate visa revocations on the Colombian government officials and all allies and supporters. Visa sanctions on all party members, family members, and supporters of the Colombian government. Enhanced customs and border protection inspections of all Colombian nationals and cargo on national security grounds. IEEPA, Treasury, banking, and financial sanctions to be fully imposed. These measures are just a beginning. We will not allow the Colombian government to violate its legal obligations with regard to the acceptance and return of the criminals they force into the United States. So after he posted this, you can't even say it was an hour. It was like minutes after this. Colombia had decided, and their president, what was his name? Gustavo Petro, had not only agreed to take them all back, but had even offered to send his presidential plane to the U.S. to go pick them up to bring them back to Colombia. This is what you call strong leadership. This is what the United States has been missing for a long time. I mean, you really haven't seen anyone with this much pushback since Reagan. George Bush Sr., Clinton, Bush Jr., Obama, Biden, none of them would have been able to go ahead and get this done. That's because when Trump says he's going to do something, he does it. And the tariffs, as I've talked about before, I'm a huge supporter of them. I actually think it's a great thing that he wants to increase the tariffs, as I've explained to several people already. We went ahead and we didn't have income taxes up until about I want to say 1913. It was around that time. Don't remember the exact year, but it was around 1912, 1913. Up until that time, the government was fully funded by tariffs. And by imposing the tariffs, that's going to go ahead and bring in a lot of extra money. My only concern with that is while we bring in this money from tariffs, we can realistically go ahead and cut down or eliminate income tax. We can also go ahead and bring down the corporate tax rates. The problem is with our government, Congress, House of Representatives, and Senate, they are on such a spending fury. I mean, we have a deficit of over $2 trillion a year. Our national debt is $37 trillion. They'll get greedy and they'll want the money from the tariffs, but then they'll want the additional money from the income taxes and from the corporate tax rates. So it's going to be a fight to go ahead and get them on board to actually try and do away with income tax altogether, decrease corporate tax rates, and use the money from the tariffs to go ahead and fund our government. Now, with that being said, when you go to Walmart, Target, or any one of these other department stores out there, Kohl's, wherever, a lot of the stuff you find there from overseas, China, for example. A lot of people go and they shop on them Temu and Shein apps from China, because when China sends something over here to the U.S., they only pay a 1.6% tariff rate. So they can go ahead and they can sell the stuff a lot cheaper. Not to mention, a lot of these places use child labor, where they're not paying a real good livable wage. And then you also have, at least in the case of China, pretty much everything's government owned. So they don't worry about paying themselves because they're going to take the money, the profits, and they go straight to the government anyways. But by imposing these tariffs, depending on what the tariff rates are, you can go ahead, you can decrease the corporate tax rate hit on the businesses here in the U.S., raise the cost for any business doing business out over there in China, as far as the factories and warehouses, and you can make it more beneficial for them to bring their business back to the U.S. Just last year, we seen John Deere leave and move to Mexico because it was overall cheaper for them. Apple, Nike, a lot of these big companies, they all have factories over in China because they can produce the stuff, ship it over here, and still pay less than what they do if they did business here in the U.S. This is going to open up a lot of different jobs, and a lot of them will be decent paying jobs, factories, warehouses, stuff like that. And we're going to keep American businesses here in the U.S. instead of sending them out all over the country. And like I said, I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to be a benefit for everybody. Yes, the Chinese goods, the goods coming from overseas, they're going to have to go up, and they're going to go ahead and increase their price some. But then we're going to have American products that are going to be able to be competitive with them, so we can actually rely more on American goods than we do now. In 2020, when 2019, Trump had raised the tariffs on China, I believe, to about 8 to 10%. It was something like that. However, in 2020, when the COVID pandemic hit, he had to go ahead and decrease the tariffs again back down to 1.6%, because he realized that all of the medical supplies that we need, we were getting them all from China. I don't know about you, but yeah, I'd rather not have Chinese medical equipment. As I've talked about before, I was just in the hospital on Christmas Eve, and yeah, it wasn't good. and there's a lot of work that needs to be done with the medical side, but we'll get into that another day. But yeah, I don't want Chinese equipment being used in our hospitals. I don't think that we need to rely on these other countries for essential needs that we need. We can get it done here, but we got to be smart about it. And like I said, with the tariffs, moving the companies back here to the U.S., stop putting such a heavy tax burden on them, because it was 38% corporate tax rate up until 2018, when Trump had fought to go ahead and get it brought down to 21%. And 21% I still think is a high rate. I think we can do a lot better. And when these tariffs start getting implemented, I believe he say he's going to start the first round on February 1st. Then we can start bringing more money in. We can start talking about decreasing the corporate tax rate. We can start talking about decreasing the income tax. So that's kind of my rant on that. But yeah, I mean, like I said, that's the strong leadership we need. We need someone who's going to go ahead and not throw out empty threats. So it's like Obama's, don't cross this red line and with Iran. This is a red line in the sand. You can't cross it. They jumped right over that line and nothing was done. Trump says something. It's like he tells you he's going to retaliate. If you don't friggin' work with him, he's going to retaliate, and he's going to hold to it. And like I said, I just read his True Social, exactly what was going on with the tariffs and banning all Colombian government officials and everything else in the United States, and it got results. At the end of the day, that's what we all want. So now moving on to the nominations, Trump's nominations for his cabinet. So far, the only ones who have been confirmed have been Marco Rubio for Secretary of State, John Ratcliffe for CIA Director, Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, Kristi Noem, Homeland Security Secretary. The ones we have still not got confirmed are Pam Bondi, Attorney General, Doug Collins, Veterans Affairs Secretary, Elise Stefanik, UN Ambassador, Russ Voigt, Office of Management and Budget Chief, Brooke Rollins, Secretary of Agriculture, Sean Duffy, Secretary of Transportation, Chris Wright, Energy Secretary, Doug Burgum, Interior Secretary, Lee Zeldin, EPA Administrator, Scott Turner, Department of Housing and Urban Development Chief, Scott Bassett, Treasury Secretary, Howard Lutnick, Commerce Secretary, Lori Chavez DeRemer, Labor Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Secretary of Health and Human Services, Linda McMahon, Education Secretary, Tulsi Gabbard, National Intelligence Director, Jameson Greer, U.S. Trade Representative, Kelly Loeffler, Administrator of the Small Business Administration, Mohamed Oz, Centers for Medicaid and Medicare and Medicaid Services Administrator, Brandon Carr, Chair of the Federal Communications Commission, and Kash Patel, FBI Director. Now, we have a Republican Senate, but yet they're slow walking. We're already through the first week. As I was talking about before, Pete Hegseth, who finally got confirmed, forcing J.D. Vance to come down to the Senate floor to go ahead and cast a tie-breaking vote. He was confirmed as the Secretary of Defense, but he had 3 Republicans that went off and opposed him with all the Democrats. Those quote-unquote Republicans were Senator Susan Collins from Maine, Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, and Mitch McConnell from Kentucky. Now, it really is not that big of a shock. Everyone's known about these people for years and years and years. None of them had a problem, voting and confirming Biden's cabinet. And the thing is you may not like these people. You may not like, all of this. Your job is just make sure that it's not a criminal. They're not criminal masterminds. They're not do things outside of their jobs and everything else. But what they did is they did a witch hunt. It was a lot like the Kavanaugh stuff. Pete Hegseth had an extramarital affair, which they want to blast him for and tell him that he's not fit to be a leader. However, when you look at the Senate and Congress, 98% of them have all done the same thing. Not saying it's right. It's not right regardless of who you are. But to go ahead and condemn someone and tell them that they can't lead people because they made a mistake, well, that's wrong. Because I don't know anybody, especially no one that served in Congress, whether it be in the House or in the Senate, that haven't sinned, that haven't screwed up majorly. So it's ridiculous, and you just can't trust them. I mean, I've said it a million times. Yeah, I could sit here and just pick on the Democrats all day long, all day and all night. I mean, that's easy, but it's not just the Democrats. You actually have some Democrats that will actually work across the aisle and go ahead and do things. Very small minority of them. They're not all obstructionist, but it's the people sitting there with a R next to their name who are routinely referred to as rhinos, Republican in name only, just because they know Democrat can't win their area. So they go ahead and say, hey, I'm a Republican. They put an R next to their name, they get elected, and then they just vote the same way the Democrats do. So it's amazing that we haven't been able to get more confirmation hearings done over the last week. We've had a total of 4, I believe. Marco Rubio was the first one to get confirmed, followed by John Ratcliffe and Pete Hegseth and Chrissy Nome, and these just happened about like maybe 2 days ago. And this is one of the problems I had with John Thune becoming the speaker, the majority speaker, because I knew that he was going to go ahead and do this. He's going to slow walk everything. There's no reason why he couldn't have got a decent amount more of these confirmations done in the time, but he's going to slow walking it. It reminds me of when we had Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan in 2016. Speaker Johnson hasn't really screwed up yet. Of course, it's only been a week. I've had plenty of problems with him in the past, but since Trump has took office, I haven't seen him go ahead and do too bad yet. We will see. We will see where that leads and what happens with that. But yeah, I'm definitely keeping tabs on him. And another thing, Trump is signing an executive order because there were about 8,000 military troops that were kicked out of the military for refusing to take the COVID vaccination. If you've been watching the show at all, you know how against the COVID vaccinations, especially the mandates I was. Now in the military, a lot of times, routinely, they'll force you to take shots like the flu shot. You got to do the TB once a year. You got to go ahead and you got mandatory vaccinations. But the difference with the other mandatory vaccinations and the COVID one is the COVID vaccination never went through thorough testing. It was more along the lines of, hey, we think this might help. Go ahead and take it, which obviously ain't come out and tell us. They told us that it was 100% safe and effective, and it would completely eliminate any chances you have of catching COVID, which we now know is a lie. Said there's no serious health risk with it, which we know is a complete lie. And then they said, oh, well, if you have the vaccination and if you get COVID, you can transmit it to somebody else. Once again, we realize that's a lie. If you notice, there's a theme going on here. Well, anyways, these service members had decided they refused to get the COVID vaccination because I'm going to say they were smart, but they just didn't have faith in it. And they didn't want to risk it. So they got thrown out of the military. And Trump signed a executive order stating that anyone who was thrown out of the military for refusing to take the COVID vaccination, if they want to go ahead and come back in the military at this point in time, they can with full back pay. Now, full back pay, you're talking about 6 figures. Pretty much regardless of rank. They've been kicking people out for the last 3 years. And sadly, we still have some industries where they're forcing people, their employees, to go ahead and get the COVID vaccination. One reason why I'm completely against any kind of mandatory vaccinations is when I was in the Army, they went up and told me I had to go get the anthrax vaccination. So I reluctantly said, okay, I'll go get it. So the anthrax vaccination, it's a 5-shot series. And then you got to get a booster every year to stay current and up to date. Well, I had to go ahead and take the series 5 different times. The first time I took it, I made it to about shot 3. And when I went to go get the 4th shot, they told me, "Oh, we're not giving it anymore. There were issues with the batches and everything. So we're ending the anthrax shot. We're not giving it anymore." Well, go forward a couple months. They go ahead and tell me, "Hey, you need to go get your anthrax shot." I'm like, "Look, I had already started the series. They told me I couldn't do it anymore, that they're not giving it out." You're like, "Oh, no. They fixed it. They're doing it again." So reluctantly, I go ahead and I go to get the anthrax shot again. This time I get through the first 4 shots. I go to get my final shot in the series. Once again, told they're no longer doing the anthrax shot. They stopped. They found new problems with it. So a couple months, maybe a year or two, year and a half passed. Get told and go back down, get the anthrax shots again. So this is my 3rd time going down. Get the first 2 shots. Once again, they stopped. They're not giving the anthrax shot anymore. 4th time, go ahead and I got to, I think it was 3 or 4 the 4th time. And then once again, it was told to stop. Finally, on the 5th attempt, I go to get the anthrax shot. Got all 5 shots. And a year later, I go to get my booster. And once again, I'm told, no, there's a screw up. They're not giving the anthrax shot anymore. Now, I don't know what long-term effects I'm going to have due to these anthrax shots. But I 100% support anybody that decides that they don't want to take a shot, especially for something like COVID. Where, most of the people in the military, they're fairly young, they're in good shape, or they used to be until, they decided to get rid of the standards. But they're the lowest risk for having severe effects from getting COVID if they catch it. That's a lot like the flu. It's like, I know when they forced us to get the flu shots, I'd get the flu shot and I'd be sick as a dog for like a week. I wouldn't be able to do pretty much anything. I mean, I was completely worthless. However, if I don't get the COVID, or if I don't get the flu shot, and I catch the flu organically, I'm down for about half a day and then I'm back and I'm fine. And normally it'll kick in, with my experience with it, the last few times I've had in the flu, which hasn't really been often. I get sick around noon, go ahead and take some NyQuil and whatnot, get some sleep it off, wake up the next morning, I feel fine. So you tell me, I mean, does it make sense for people to go out and get this and get all these vaccinations? I don't. And that's why I avoid getting a lot of these vaccinations, and God knows what they're actually giving you in these vaccinations. As I learned with the Toradol shot, I actually took the advice of the medical providers, and yeah, I'm still screwed up even over a month later. So yeah, I have very little faith in our medical providers anymore. Not like I had a whole lot of faith in them to begin with, but it seems like now all they want to do is give you pills or give you shots and send you on the door. There's no more actual practice in medicine and trying to find the problem and fix the issues and the problems. So that's my rant on that. So you have, especially, and this story comes from the DA out of Philadelphia. The DA, or several DAs, are talking about they're trying to find charges that they can charge January 6 participants that were granted clemency by Trump with new crimes on state and local levels. So Trump had pardoned them and gave them clemency for the federal charges that they were locked up for. Well, the states are pissed off, and now that some of these states, especially in Democrat-controlled areas with Democrat DAs, they want to find any way that they can charge them and put them back in jail on the state or local levels where they have not received, clemency or anything like that. You can see how political it all is. It's just getting ridiculous. You have the Inspector General dismissed by Trump, calls mass firings a threat to democracy. How many times have we heard this? But yet when we look at a lot of these inspector generals and we look at a lot of these government employees, they're so politicalized, and they go on witch hunts. If you don't believe what they believe, they're going to come after you. I mean, just look at the FBI, the CIA, NSA. I mean, NSA, let's face it, they're spying on all of us. So should there not be mass firings? And then God only knows there's a lot of positions in the federal government that should be done away with, that we have no use for, but people want to give their friends jobs, and that's what they do. It's not a threat to democracy. If anything, it's strengthening our constitutional republic, because our federal government has gotten so overbloated with all these duties, responsibilities, and authority and everything else that they are not supposed to have. A lot of these agencies are not constitutionally required, but they have everyone believe that they are, so they can continue on with it. I mean, the FBI, I don't remember the FBI being around. I think it was like 1920s, 1930s when the FBI was formed. So it's not like it's even been an agency that long. You're talking about maybe 100 years, if that. It may not even be 100 years yet. Trump open to considering re-entering the World Health Organization, the WHO, but they'd have to clean it up. I think that's a wrong move on his part. I mean, I don't know. I can't say why, but I can't stand the WHO, the UN, all of these globalist organizations, which they want us involved in for the sole purpose of taking our money. That's it. They could give a rat's ass less about us. Look at the UN. We pay about a third of their entire budget. And yet, instead of doing their actual job, which is to go ahead and prevent and stop wars and conflicts from breaking out, all they do is they condemn us for stupid shit. They condemn us for overturning Roe versus Wade in the Supreme Court. They condemn us for not welcoming legal immigrants into the country with open arms. They condemned us for our use of natural gas. Last time I checked, that wasn't the job of the United Nations. So why are we spending all of this money on them? I would actually hope that we can one day get out of the United Nations. It's just a complete dumpster fire. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and talk on this real quick, and we can pick this up next week. Trump's crackdown on trans troops, New Order nixes preferred pronouns, and restricts facility use. Trump had also went ahead and signed an executive order stating that the U.S. will only recognize two genders, male and female. That's it. Transgender troops, I've talked about it in the past. I did some research on it to figure out exactly, educate myself on the issue. There's so many side effects and so many reasons why there should not be trans troops in the military. When you go ahead and you look at it, they have to go ahead and see a psychiatrist on a weekly basis. They get put on hormone pills, which go ahead and do all kinds of damage on their body and everything, but we can get into that later. And they have to be under close mental health supervision, because it does a lot of stuff. It causes massive depression, suicidal ideology, and all kinds of other stuff. Not to mention if they actually have the surgeries, so they're really not going to be able to go onto the field and do their job or do anything else. So my time's about up. Once again, I'd like to thank GCD Network for helping sponsor this program. I look forward to seeing you all back here next week. And until then, God bless the United States, God bless Texas, and God bless each and every one of you. Thank you and good night.